Hello, boys and girls, salamanders, and welcome to another episode of The Unstarving Musician. This is episode 355. I don't know why I have been waiting for this episode just numerically. It seems like almost milestone-ish. A housekeeping note, for those of you who are regular listeners and pay attention to such things, I got a bit off schedule recently. As the result, there was a 3-week gap between the last episode and this one. If you were bummed by this, my apologies. If you're a subscriber of Liner Notes, a similar thing happened. If that bummed you out, my apologies. There's another gap coming for both the podcast and Liner Notes, my free newsletter, which were scheduled production gaps, previously scheduled production gaps. These production gaps help me do some necessary planning, so we have another sort of 3-week gap coming up. So, yes, the first set was the result of me being discombobulated during our recent move to a newly constructed home. The next set are planned. Things are back under control, though. Do not panic. In music news, my favorite band, the Rolling Stones, just dropped a new album in its entirety, and I love it. Producer Andrew Watt, I hope I got that right, Watt, not Watts, has done an amazing job taking the band in a somewhat new direction, and wow, I can't believe the Stones are still making great music. Okay, enough about me and my world and the music I love. Here's something independent artists often don't think about when they book a show. The people who bought tickets through the venue's ticketing platform, you don't have their contact information. The platform does. And unless you've built a separate system to capture fan data, those people walked in, watched you play, and walked out as strangers. You have no way to ever reach them again, and that's sad. That's the gap my guest today has spent more than a decade helping artists close. Cody DeLong is the CEO and co-founder of SoundRink, a live music technology company that helps artists build VIP experiences, run pre-sales, and own the fan data that comes out of their live shows. He started his career booking tours for punk and emo bands, co-founded Armada Merch, a direct-to-consumer merch platform for artists, and has built SoundRink into a platform used across the touring spectrum, from independent artists just getting started to major-level acts. What I wanted to get into with Cody wasn't a pitch for any particular platform, it's a framework. What should an independent artist actually be doing at their live shows to capture fan data, build relationships with their most committed fans, and start generating revenue beyond what the ticket sale produced? And where does that start if you're early in your career and don't have the infrastructure for a full VIP program? Cody had clear answers for this, and they are more accessible than most artists think. You can reach Cody via soundrink.com or on his socials, which are all listed at the top of his website, soundrink.com. He told me that he'd love to hear from you. All right, here is me speaking with Cody DeLong of SoundRink.
I played the drums when I was younger. My dad would like to tell me I am a musician, but I'm definitely not. I can still play the drums, just not well. I can hold a beat, but I realize music. I think I realized business or something ancillary to music at a young age was more my kind of what I wanted to do, I learned that pretty young. So
yeah, it looks like I was kind of trying to ascertain your professional history. It looks like you got into the business in your 20s, right? Or younger?
I was younger. So yeah, I started out. So let's see, where should I start? I started out, my first concert was Def Leppard at the Big E in Springfield, Massachusetts. And then I started playing drums when I was I think 9 or 10, around 10. And then the internet, actually, I was a big kind of computer nerd type. I was on AOL Instant Messenger and I'd find all these bands and listen to them. And so I'd go, my mom, I don't know, for some reason, my mom and dad would just bring me to concerts and drop me off when I was 12, 13 years old. So, they would drive me to yeah, it's kind of funny,
Yeah.
me and my friends. So I was 12 or 13. I think one of the first big shows I went to that was like not my parents' style music was at the Palladium in Worcester, Massachusetts. And it was, I want to say it was the band Homegrown with Hidden in Plain View, Alistair. It's like a drive-through records tour, actually, I think, back in like, I want to say 2021, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I went to that, and then my parents would bring me to so many concerts, but I got into actually being into photography. And so I was really into photography. And so back in the day, you could easily like go work. People would popping up websites like absolutepunk.net and punknews.org. And, I think Lambgoat was even around at that point. And so I started working for this website called Addicting Punk, and I learned how to get photo passes and how to get media passes. And so I would go to these shows and I would do reviews and I'd interview bands. I'd interview so many different people, everybody from like the Academy is to Jonah from One Line Drawing to Acceptance. And we'd write up these interviews and do photos and they'd get published. And I would get, sometimes I had photos in like magazines. Well, the first magazine I was in was this magazine called Fat City Magazine out of Boston. And it was a picture of Dan Yemin from Paint It Black from a show at the ICC Church in Alston. Shout out ICC. They're not around anymore, but that was like going to punk and hardcore shows and emo shows and everything in between. And then, we go to local shows. One of my good friends, she, growing up, her parents were pretty cool too. And like, so bands would stay at her house, which was really cool. They'd like, kind of was this thing where like you came around and they'd have a floor to sleep on. And then I was like, why am I not booking shows? And so I partnered up and met some people that were booking local shows, and I kind of helped take that to the next level as far as local shows go. So we would book them in church basements, town halls, VFW halls, American Legion halls, and with every band from A Day to Remember to August Burns Red to the number 12 Looks Like You, half of them like playing on the floor, which is unheard of these days. And then slowly but surely, I was like, I want to book tours. And so, yeah, so then I started booking tours at a young age. I worked at a company also at the same time, right out of high school, called Flea Marketing, which was a indie
It's a
retail
great
marketing.
name.
Yeah, it's awesome, and awesome people there. I met a lot of really cool people. I mean, Joe Lenardi, who was the owner, and AJ Toby took me under their wing, and I would just like, it was a lot of calling record stores, getting counts of what they sold for records that week for the albums we were working on. But I mean, we worked on everything from like the last Steel Train album before, fun became fun. And then working on like the Raconteurs and Grace Potter, the Nocturnals, and just meeting all these people, Not a Surf, who are some awesome dudes. You know, Crazy story. They had to borrow my car like the month after I bought the car because they were in New Hampshire and had the manager had to get them to Boston, and there was something going on with the rental, and it was a whole thing. But anyways, that's a crazy story. So they borrowed my brand new car and I was promised it would be okay. And I was like, I just bought this car. But they like filmed a TV show episode or online web episode of like cooking. So, at a young age, at like 17, 18, just like getting to meet all these people and working in industry while booking. And then I think it was like nine, I want to say 20. At 20, I was approached by Matt Pike at the Kenmore Agency and Merrick at the Kenmore Agency, who were in Beverly, Massachusetts. And they were looking for an assistant. And I was booking tours, and so they had me come down to their office, and I was hired the same day. And then I think I even started the same day because I knew how to use the software that they were using for booking because I actually had licensed the same software. And so I had all my own bands, and from there, I had a roster of about 15 to 20 bands. And then we started Soundrink. Myself, my business partner Scott Lee, and Jason Majou. We just all started the company, putting it our own bands. through Soundrink for doing VIPs and pre-sales. And, at that time, a lot of bands weren't doing that. And at least in that capacity, we were working with bands in 2 to 500 cap rooms, and then our bands that were in bigger rooms too, but really kind of honing in also on the smaller bands. And we work with a bunch of those bands that were playing those small rooms now. We work with them to this day, and they're playing, House of Blues, bigger Dance Gavin Dance is one, working with that band since they were playing 200 cap halls and doing a VIP for 15 people, and just kind of built the business from there, and then slowly got out booking, and it's been Sound all day since that point.
That's great. So what did all that pre-sound rink work, what did you find that were done right or done wrong about the fan relationship leading up to Soundrink, and how did that shape how you think about the direct fan revenue thing?
I think, shape or really launched the idea of doing it was at the time there was really no other options, and you were kind of stuck with one company. And I felt, and my partners felt at the time, that they just weren't hitting the mark on what we could provide to the fan, what the experience was, and thinking beyond just like a meet and greet and a poster. Like, what's a cool item that we could do? What's a unique experience with the band that a fan could do? If it's a cornhole game, or doing a pizza party or a local food party, and really kind of like, taking those things that we felt bands should be doing, and then applying it to these bands, and saying, okay, how can we make this experience better? And I think also from an agent standpoint, when I was there, I had bands using other companies that are now no longer companies, but it just, from an agent standpoint, it was actually, they made my job harder. I feel like in different ways, and how they coordinated the VIP and final sales, and it just wasn't as well done as I had hoped. And so we decided to just take it under our own kind of like hands, especially with the artists that we worked on, and really kind of build it from there, right? We work with a lot of our own artists, management and agency, and then built kind of like this program and our how we run things, and learned from our mistakes early on to be able to then go to other managers that we are friends with and other agents, and really be like, hey, like, we have these things down, the check-in process, the experience, the things that fans want or they don't want, and then push it onto them, and utilizing those relationships. I think those are definitely some things I learned. And I think honestly, just relationship building too, like always having a good relationship with the people you work with, regardless of how things went with the person you're working with.
Cool. So your background, if I have it right, kind of spans booking, merch, and now like this live music tech platform, or VIP, tech platform.
Yes.
How does that, what you're doing now, shape the way you approach the fan relationship?
I mean, everything we're doing, I think it shapes it, especially from the merch side. I am a partner at Armada Merchandise, and we do, it was Downright Merchandise and Overcast, and then we downright merged with Overcast, and I think the biggest thing that I've learned is really got to be a lot of the merchandising aspect of it. I think I've learned through that process of working at that company, and especially during COVID, kind of like pivoting, because a lot like live music was done. So what do you pivot to? You pivot to the business that is going to help bring in income, and focus on both. But really, during that time frame, it was like, got to stay afloat. And so I really pivoted into merchandising, and working for the merch company, and being an account manager, as well as new business development, and like working alongside people. And I think just learning the ins and outs of that, and then seeing how we could take that and really run with some solid merch offerings at Soundrink for VIP, for artists, and the production aspect, and just the coordination of that. That really helped me, especially with timelines and getting things, because I feel like early on in the company, the first few years, we're just kind of like running it as at the as best as we could, but not I had no full time experience doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
leading into COVID, I was starting to get my groove the last couple years beforehand, and then I really like understood like okay, like here's a good process that's created. Here are the processes for these, and then applying those processes, you can apply those to the processes that you create for running your company, right? And deadlines and when things need to get done, and really honing in on that skill, especially as we've grown the business from, doing 30 tours a year to now doing over 250 plus tours a year, and really how do you scale that part of the business?
So, superfan is a term that still gets used a lot. How do you define it, like operationally as opposed to philosophically, but in terms of how an artist identifies who they are and what to do about them?
I mean, to me, a super fan is going to be your core fan. They're the fan that follows the band on socials, actively posts about the band, actively comments and likes, and really is engaged with the fan. Those are the fans that will spend the extra money for a VIP. But they're also, we do standalone pre-sale ticketing, and it's also used for those people who are going to buy tickets first, right? Like it's for those people who are going to buy when a show gets announced, they know they want to go and they're going to buy tickets. They're not going to wait until the day of or the week before or a couple weeks before. They're going to be the ones that want to buy them right away. So that's how I kind of describe those super fans, that they may kind of also be a casual fan, but they're that fan that is interactive with the band on, I feel like, social media as well as on Spotify. They know that they're going to go see the band. Like if that band comes to town, they know they're going to go. But those are also the same fans where, you're more apt to be able to remarket to and reward for being a super fan and for being the first one, whether that's utilizing the data you get through VIP for giving them a percentage off at the merch booth or online or giving them a free item. There's so many different things that you can then use that data for to really help build that relationship with those super fans and make sure that they're getting served to continue spreading, honestly, listening to music, but really spreading the word about the band to their friends and to be like, hey, you check this. Like that's always huge. I think that's a great way for bands to spread beyond just social media, but really word of mouth in person, listening to the music in your car, right, with your friends and stuff like that.
Is there a difference between a fan who buys, like, in your mind, who buys a VIP package once and one that actually fits in what you consider super fan category?
I would say no, but maybe also. That's a good one. You know, I feel like it also comes down to people's economic, like just the resources and just people being able to spend that extra dollar. I don't would never want to hold it against somebody if they could afford to buy a VIP for an artist once, and then as the artist gets bigger, they're just like, listen, I already met them once. They were awesome. That's cool. But instead of spending $50 plus the price of the ticket, now I don't want to spend 100. So, I don't want to say there is a difference. I think that it's kind of all relative to people's, just especially the economy these days, like what they can spend or can't spend. And on our end, it's our job to go to these artists and give them our recommendation for what's the best pricing structure to make sure that you are able to get repeat buyers, right? You would never want it to be someone who's like, oh man, I saved up and I spent $200 for the VIP, but like I'm next tour, like I'm not going to be able to spend the $200. It's like, to me, I would rather an artist charge less so that those fans who would spend that money as a super fan would continue to be able to attend the VIP and meet you again and form those relationships and really kind of like nurture that bond, because in the end, they're the ones that are going to want to go buy merch when they do have an extra few dollars and when they can't afford that. And so trying to keep those fans happy, I think they're definitely similar. And then there's also those fans that just buy them once and maybe they grow out of the band too, and they were a super fan. So that's also something to consider too, is there's just some people that are stoked on a band for a couple years and then they're not. So
Yeah, sure, sure. Life changes. Uh,
exactly.
So what does an artist, or how rather, do they build, like, a super fan from one who otherwise Yeah, I was gonna say buys, just a VIP package once, but that may not be the right framing. But just however you can imagine, like from the fan who's just not yet a super fan, how do they help build them to that point?
I mean, I think I think the biggest thing is nurturing that relationship with an artist, with the artist fans. We have a lot of fans, a lot of artists that they start out, they may not want to do a VIP. They may not want to say, hey, we're going to meet the fans, as in a paid VIP rather. They would rather just be out at the merch table and do it. And so we have a lot of artists that'll start out, that they do pre-sale tickets and we pull them off the ticketing platforms and we sell them through our website. And, for us and for the artist, what that does is it allows the artist to own the data that they from those fans and to be able to identify these fans who are buying because the pre-sale period is technically only 3 to 4 business days, depending on the announce on sale. And so what's great about that is you can kind of really help nurture that relationship. You can start to offer those things, those incentives for those super fans, so those fans that those really big fans or even casual fans that just want to buy tickets right away because know they're going, and you're identifying them and we're charging a lower fee than like a Ticketmaster or an Access. And so those fans are also getting rewarded by buying early by not having to pay as much for the overall ticket cost with a service fee. And then, you can nurture that relationship. You have that data. You can, send them some deals on merchandise or first looks on an album or a video and just slowly kind of do some really meaningful, I feel like, marketing to that consumer. And then when it comes down to getting a point where the band's ready to sell VIP, they now have all these these fans that purchase the tickets but before general on sale that they know they can help push different either incentives or offers to, or first looks, or the VIP, or whatever it is, and just kind of like you want to like give them something, and even things that don't cost them anything, like little things like that, and really helping build that relationship. We've had artists that will take the data. We had an artist that took all the people that bought pre-sale for their tour, which was about 500, and they got their addresses and they sent them a postcard signed by the band to every single fan saying
That's
thank you for
cool.
buying pre-sale tickets early. And like, the next tour we actually did VIP and they sold a ton. And it's like, I know that we directly marketed to those people. And I can tell you a good chunk of them bought VIP because it was such a cool thing for them to do to help build that fan up to becoming a super fan. I mean, I feel like super fans used so highly today, but I've been using the terms
Right.
for so long, right? It's like the newest big cool thing to talk about, but it's like we've been in business since 2012, and I've been using that term since 2012. It's just how much I think the music industry has just changed, and honestly comes down to artists being able to make a living, to be on the road, and different avenues to kind of help nurture that relationship, and not just kind of like say, oh cool, they spent that money, like thanks. It's like we're like, what else can we do to like make sure that these people continue to be fans and continue to want to see people live, because there's so many bands out there and the access to music is so much more than it was even 5 years ago. And so like you got to be able to stand out as an artist and really make sure that like you're building some sort of relationship with these fans as a band that they're stoked about and that makes them want to come back for more.
Yeah. Your story about the postcard is reminding me of an interview that I think I did with a young guy named Tom Skarsinski, and he's real into the physical products aspect of helping artists. But he told me a story, I believe it was him, about the lead singer of Paramore. I think it was her and their band actually doing some campaign where they called fans directly to thank them for early adopters of, I don't know, I think it was probably first buyers of music or something. And I was like, wow. But the
Yeah.
postcard, like similar effect. Great stories.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like having the ability to do that. I mean, there was a company, and I think they're still around. I don't know if they are. I think they're probably just a different iteration, but they were called Community, and like they were doing things like that, and they were the early adopters of kind of like, we utilize Laylo for, I mean, internally, for bands, we'll use Laylo, and like they get a text message, and those artists can get text messages to that number and text them back and have those conversations, and taking an hour out of a day a week to just do that. And like those are the things that fans are going to remember and make them want to go to the show and make them want to, go buy a t-shirt at the merch stand and buy a physical album instead of just streaming it on Spotify. Having that I think for a lot of people and maybe even some people in the industry, I feel like sometimes people are really jaded on how great that relationship building is to then, building your band's brand and building your band's audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for an independent artist who's never done anything beyond ticket sales, what's the first thing they should offer fans directly, and how should they structure it?
I mean, for a band that's never done any sort of VIP or any sort of pre-sale, I mean, I think it really depends on where the artist is in their career. I think for an artist that's playing 200 to 500 cap rooms, I feel like sometimes the best bet is to just do some sort of pre-sale, a standalone ticket pre-sale, with no VIP attached to it. And then move into a VIP after that for the next tour, the next time they're headlining, because then you can kind of get a gauge of where your audience is, and starting out doing something that's as you don't want to do anything that's too intricate at first. I think that there's too many bands that are like, we want to do all these things and have 3 VIP tiers, and like, yeah, like we can do that. We do that for a lot of artists, but those artists are also playing much larger rooms. There's much more production that goes into it, staffing at the venues, and the ability to fit that into a day because load in is at 11 versus 3 hours before doors. Building that and then utilizing that data to then say, okay, we can definitely withstand doing a VIP, and then doing that VIP with a meet and greet and a photo op. And I'm always telling people you should do some assigned item with physical tickets not being a thing. A souvenir laminate is always great. I feel like that's kind of the new ticket stub, except because it's just on a piece of paper or on your
Right.
phone.
Right.
And then doing 1 to 2 like really special items, I think is really a key, I think a really big part. And you want to create value. For me, it's always been, let's create value for these fans. Let's get as close as we can with the actual retail cost of the item as maybe what the VIP is costing, not total, but like, so the fan definitely is buying something that's of value, and they're not just buying it to meet you. Like let's make sure that we're giving them something that's value, because I hate it when I hear fans are like, oh, I only met the band for 5 seconds and like all I got was a signed poster. And that does happen. And sometimes that's just the way the day goes. And you are paying for the photo, you are meeting them, but like what can we do to create some value? So in those instances where maybe there's only so much time, a fan doesn't feel like they got gypped, and they feel like they did get something of value beyond just the photo, to really help them, be happy with the VIP.
Yeah, yeah. When you think about like the minimal viable version of this, what does an indie artist need in place before the approach makes sense? Is there anything beyond, like you were talking about the room sizes just being one consideration? Is there anything beyond that that comes to mind?
I mean, I think having a routed tour with, and working in venues that are able to facilitate, I think that's really the big thing, is having the audience that will buy it, knowing that they're going to buy it, and then also playing in rooms and working with a team that can handle coordinating that. It's more of like, I feel like an internal thing. An agency that is booking it, it's if you're still self-booking your band, I don't think you're at the level of which like you need to be doing VIPs. You need to be focusing on your tour and booking your tour and focusing on getting people out to your shows. I think when you're at the level that, I mean, you don't need a manager. We have plenty of bands we work with that they manage themselves, but I think, having somebody on your team that's a booking agent that's booking these tours, I think that's definitely a big thing, because there are things that go into this, especially if we're pulling tickets or if we're just doing VIP upgrades with no ticket. There's just a lot of different parts that we help with, but also like those relationships that the agents have with us, it really just helps everything flow very smoothly on the road, and day of.
Where do artists most commonly undercharge or like leave money on the table in structuring these kind of offerings?
I think that there are different ways of running VIP. One way is figuring out exactly where you want to sell your VIP. And so we work with a lot of artists, and some sell them on SoundRink as a VIP ticketing platform, where we actually sell them with a ticket during the pre-sale period and then as an upgrade after the pre-sale period. And that works great for a lot of artists. And then there is putting them on the local ticketing platforms with Ticketmaster and Access. And I feel like there are some artists that 100% need to do that. We work with them, and it makes sense. We work with artists that you're doing that for Breaking Benjamin and Seether and Hollywood Undead, and we're selling them on Ticketmaster. That's where their fans find out about shows. It's through rock stations, it's through the Ticketmaster newsletter. It all makes sense. And then there's other artists where I feel like they do that, but by doing that, what ends up happening is a percentage of that income does go to Ticketmaster and Access. It's built into their policies and things that we've worked out with them. And so I feel like some of these artists, they leave that money on the table in the sense of they're paying for an additional service that they don't really need to do. I feel like sometimes, and a lot of times, we can sell these without having to do that and still, still sell through them. But that's definitely a thing that I see sometimes. It's not all the time. I just think we see it sometimes afterwards, and we do have bands that go back and they're like, you know what, completely right. We're just going to do it this way, and we don't have to give that 10% additional on top of on top of our deal with the artist. And so I feel like they definitely are able to leave that on the table. But sometimes you can add an additional merch item or an additional like just merch only package. But I'll be honest, we really do advise a lot of these artists on the best practices and where we feel they are, and they all really do listen to our expertise at this time, and really kind of like what level they're at and what they should be offering, just beyond the VIP package. I think a big thing is if you're selling a limited amount of VIPs for a meet and greet, then you should try to have a lower tier package to once you sell out, that'll still sell to still give those fans that want those cool items. And I think it's really when you're doing a cool item, still at least get the item, even if they can't meet the band, and get an early entry into the show. So they get up to get up to the pit and get up to the barricade. So,
Yeah. So what kills a VIP offering? Like, are there failure modes you've seen more than once?
What would kill? I mean, really the biggest thing I think is the artist participation. I think artists like actually genuinely wanting to like be there or at least put their game face on for the day. I think that's a big thing. Artists, we've had some artists, and this was years ago now, to just not show up to the VIP or a missing member or just acting like they just don't want to be there or not having the interaction with the fans. And I think that, if you're an artist that's going to be doing VIP, definitely understanding that, hey, there is going to be an hour a day where you have to have this interaction with the fan and enjoying that part of it, because fans do see when a band, and we get messages, we have had messages where people are like, well, this person was not nice, or
Oh man,
like wanting a refund because the band, they're like, I got like 1 second and they just like shooed me off and I didn't even get to say anything. And it's like, I think that if you're gonna do a VIP, you need to know that, like, and everybody has bad days. Don't get me wrong. I understand. Being on the road is tough. You're a long way from your family, your friends, and that's totally cool. And I get it. Some people have bad days, but I think it's more of when it's like a all the time thing.
sure.
There's just some artists where it's like, listen, then maybe you shouldn't be doing VIP, and maybe we should pivot and try to do something where the fan is still getting something, but they're not going to meet you because it's just not, it's obviously something that doesn't want to, that maybe you don't want to do, which is fine. And again, that's totally cool. I'm not here to judge anybody. I understand some things it's just not for everybody, and sometimes it's just doing that every day and learning that, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think it's gotten this is sort of a side question that came up because I remember years ago I went to see a friend who was playing in a really big band. He gave us, kind of VIP treatment, my wife and I and a friend, and so we sat at the soundboard, watched the show, and that was after a backstage thing, and then they took us over to the little meet and greet where they were on a platform, like signing autographs and stuff. But do you think it's gotten harder for artists to do these kind of things over the years, or maybe a little easier because of things like what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gotten easier in the sense of depending on the size of the band, I think it's gotten easier for a lot of bands just because it's way more of like it's more common. It's a lot more common. I mean, we're in a world where when we started this company, we were trying to convince bands to do VIP, right? Like we were like, "Hey guys, this is a great way to bring in extra money. This is awesome." And like we had to pitch that idea to these bands and also the idea to these venues that hey, this is going to be happening. And now it's so common and so many bands are doing it because it's, creating this additional income. They're also able to really help build that relationship with those top tier fans. We're now going to these bands and it's more of a hey, what can we offer better than everybody else that's offering because we're not they want to do it. It's that, and so I feel like it's definitely gotten easier in the sense of artists seeing that it's definitely a good way to bring in additional income. I think where it does get harder sometimes is bands who are getting larger that we used to do VIPs before and that they no longer have the time in the day to give to the VIP. And how can we go ahead and figure out ways to still do a VIP program while also providing the fan with some great items and still try to bring in that additional income and creating a package that's of value. And so we have some artists that are like that. And it's just not able to fit it in the day in which they have a lot of radio and they have different aspects and it just does become a lot because they're now instead of they're playing for an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes on their headlining tour rather than playing for 60 minutes and they're in much larger venues and it's just a lot harder. And it honestly, it takes a lot more time out of their day to do. Where they really want to focus on making sure that they are playing the show to the best of the ability to, the 5,000 people that are going to see them rather than the 100 that would be buying the meet and greet, and making sure that everybody that they're at the top of their game and not, over talking and not, making sure that that is that their own health and everything is all good for the tour and each event. So
Yeah, sure, makes sense. So in a structured VIP or pre-sale setup where the data capture is built in, well, that's one thing. But like an artist who's playing a club show with no platform infrastructure, what should they be capturing, and what does ownership of that data actually look like, or what should it look like for them?
Yeah, I mean, so an artist that sells on SoundRank, when an artist sells on SoundRank and the fan purchases, and they agree to opt in to, communication from the artist and from SoundRank. I mean, for that data, they're able to capture that data, and then it's all segmented by the venue and location in which the concert happened, and so they can then utilize that data within their mailing list and segmenting it that way. A lot of the times they're uploading it to a Klaviyo or a Lalo account or MailChimp and just being able to segment that data. And I think honestly, it's great when you can then take that data and on your next tour, whether you do VIP or not, or whether you do a pre-sale or not, you can then reach those fans into a very targeted email like, hey, we're coming to Boston, Massachusetts on November 21st, and we're playing the Paradise Rock Club, and like giving those people first access or an email and really heavily targeting them. We have a lot of artists that'll then use that data to announce new shows, and then you have the direct link to the tickets or to the VIP or the pre-sale, and then capturing that instantly. It's one click, goes to there, they add to the cart, they buy the items, and so it really helps with that capture because I feel like with TikTok and Instagram Reels, everybody's just scrolling and going on to the next thing, and it's like you need to be able to capture that fan and capture their attention to buy that ticket because it may not be there or the fan may not buy it and say I'll buy it later and they forget about the show or the show sells out and they're mad or there's so many different reasons, and you want to try to capture that fan's attention. So if you have that fan data to utilize that to see exactly like these fans that will go ahead and buy tickets first or buy a VIP or just reward them and let them know that, hey, we're thinking of you and that like we want to let you know we're coming to town and it'd be great if you came and saw us play again.
And for the artist who doesn't have the infrastructure, and I think you were kind of getting into it there in the end, but how should they be capturing it, and how should they think about it, about the data?
I
Or
mean, I think that the way to capture it is definitely utilizing services, utilizing your merch sales, beyond just VIP, right? Like I think that every artist should be using a service like Laylo or OpenStage where they're capturing fans that want to hear from them. People that are signing up for those services are signing up because they want to get a text message with the latest dates. They want to get an email with those dates. So like starting there, I think is great. And then utilizing that, whether it's, capturing, hey, you want first, you know, to input your number, your email, and get first access to our music video we're putting on YouTube, or, pre-save the album through this link, and then get access to the song first and get notified. Like all those things and helping build that early on will allow you to then have that and build off of it as your band further gets larger and into more audiences and touring more. And then you're able to then segment that data, and those people in all those cities you're going to when you're touring, or you're doing an in-store or whatever. You can utilize that data to then say, okay, wow, we have like there's 1,000 people on our Phoenix, Arizona list, like, and we haven't played there in like 2 years or a year and a half. Maybe that is the place we should be going to play, because we have a lot of people there that follow us, and we know that we could at least play a 500 cap room. And that's just the people that are signed up. Or hey, we've been doing this a while, and we don't have a lot of people in this area versus this area of the state. Maybe we should go play a smaller show here and not go as big, because you can utilize that data too, mix with like Spotify data where your listeners are. It's just one part of the ecosystem. I feel like it's one part of what you're utilizing to make decisions about your band, maybe where you're going to play, maybe where you're going to build, or maybe the size of the venue that you feel like would warrant you playing. I mean, there's plenty of artists, right, that are huge in one area and not so big in another. And sometimes it happens and you go play a bigger venue than you should have. And then next time you're going to go to the little bit smaller venue in that area. This allows you to maybe help not make not to say mistake, but learn from that. You can kind of already gauge like, hey, let's do an underplay here because we can stall it out, but we wouldn't be able to play this larger venue. So I think it kind of all goes hand in hand. And you can use the data and start building that early on, utilizing those services, or ones like it. Even a MailChimp. A MailChimp is just as good. I mean, that's a lot of artists have it. I think just trying to capture the superfan data. You can do it on your website, on your Instagram, on the merch table. There's artists that are out there with the merch table. There's all those things.
Sure. So maybe I should ask this more in terms of services that an artist will use in conjunction with the artist. But what does an artist who handles fan data well do differently in the 48 hours after a show versus one who doesn't?
I think one that handles it well, if they're capturing that data for those fans that did go to the show, I think there's definitely some follow-up a fan could do. Maybe not necessarily 48 hours, maybe if it's a week, but I think reaching out to those fans on a mass scale, not on like a not individual scale, but reaching out and thanking them for going to the tour. Sending an email or text like, hey, thank you for coming out to the tour. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you picked something up that merch. If you didn't, here's 10% off our online merch store. And utilizing that and kind of like giving back to them in a way, and that will help in additional merch sales and also help in making them feel good about being an early adopter of the band. I think that's something that I see some artists doing. I feel like there's others that aren't. It's just really, I think, how you can, especially, I think it helps, especially when you're a younger band and or a band that's on the rise. I think like building those relationships and offering kind of like those thanks for coming out really does help. As a larger scale and a larger band, I feel like it is definitely harder. I understand, like, that's not something that everybody can just do, but with the technology and the things that we have these days, I feel like it is something that's possible for a team in place, whether it's the artist director, their team, to really kind of to market to and really push. I know we do a lot of tours where at the end of the tour, the artist will send out an email to all their buyers thanking them for coming to the VIP or buying pre-sale. And we do have artists that will do that, and they'll send a coupon code for merch, and they see some great results from that. And honestly, just having that sense of the fan, I feel like they get it, and they definitely appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, yeah. What are the practical barriers, like technical, legal, logistical, or something else, that stop smaller independent artists from owning their fan data?
Sometimes I think it's their label deals that they sign. If we're talking a sign ban, I think sometimes it's definitely going to be that. If they're signed to a label that is the one creating their mailing list, like I'm sure we've all seen it, where you go on an artist site and the site is tied to the label, and you sign up and it goes to the email is a U Music email address, right? And like the artist has that, and best of luck actually owning that data and getting that data. I'm sure you can get it. I'm sure there's artists that they've had a hard time. I'm sure it's mixed results, right? And I think that that's definitely a hard thing to kind of to get into depending on how your deal works. But I think really making sure that any sort of email list that a fan has, you 100% have access to those fans, right? And I think legally making sure you have the right terms of service and making sure you have all the right language. I mean, we go through our privacy policy, terms of service, everything all the time to make sure that everything is up to par, because you never want to be just like emailing people who don't want to receive it, right? You need to make sure that they're the people that opted in, that they're people that are legally able to get that, and that you're giving them an opt out if they don't want that. If they don't want to get an email from you. I think that's another thing is, certainly we've gotten emails before. It's like, where's the unsubscribe? Or you unsubscribe and doesn't actually unsubscribe, right? And so those are the things where like you're relying on the technology piece for that and making sure that those things are in there, and that you're up to snuff and able to really make sure that those things are key. Because I know on our end, like we're always constantly making sure that everything is good on that front, because it's just ever evolving. Privacy in this country, privacy in Europe, UK. I mean, all of them. You got to make sure that you're complying and not bending the rules. The biggest thing for artists is, not being able to own all the ticket data from the tickets you sell on ticketing platforms, right? So you go play a venue and 500 tickets get sold, and you do a pre-sale through SoundRank and we sell through 50 tickets, but the other 450 people, you don't get those names, you don't get those email addresses, you can't send an email to them because of how the policies work at those ticketing companies. It's not every ticketing company. I'm sure there are ones that can send them, but I know, there are some where you can't, and you can't use that data, but they bought a ticket to the show, and it's like the artist should be able to utilize that to remarket or retarget, or to give them an opt-in, or to email them and say, hey, thanks for coming to the show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to join our mailing list, here's our mailing list. If you don't, we won't ever email you again. Like the ability to do that, like at least having that opt-in, I think would go a long way for a lot of artists. And I think that that's something where we come in with the VIP and doing, even like I said, just pre-sale tickets. We do just pre-sale tickets for larger artists too. And it's like, because they want to be able to at least capture and own that 8 to 10% of those people that are buying through SoundRank, because it's much better than not having any of it.
Right, right. What variables would you say have the biggest impact on outcome of these types of packages? Is like artist size, genre market, offer structure, or something else?
I really don't think there's a ton of barriers when it comes down to it. I think any band can do what we're doing. I just think it comes down to a fan base and how their fan base is. I didn't know that's a weird answer, but like there's some bands where like they have these diehard fans, right? And you could do a VIP in a 200 capacity room, and they would sell 30 or 50 or whatever. So 25% of the room would be just VIP. And then you have artists that they'll struggle to sell 5 in a 200 cap room. And so I really think it comes down to the fan base and how big they are into the artist and really kind of like, I don't say the fandom, but really it is kind of the fandom. We work with bands of all sizes where they have bands that are super, their fans are just diehard crazy fans, but they are not the biggest band in the world. And then there's bands that are, three times the size of them that sell the same amount of VIP, and they're playing, 2,000 cap rooms, but their fans are not as like die hard, right, as the band that's playing 200. It's crazy how it's different per band and different per genre and different per, who's in the band, or, there's a lot of different aspects.
I would imagine there's just kind of a demographic, like an age demographic thing that comes into play there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the age definitely has to do with it. I think the age, financial situations, I think just how the genre of music, right? Because some genres of music are super niche. And so like when you have those fans that are into that genre, they're all in, right? That's their niche. That's what they're into. And then you have other genres of music that are not as niche, that are just like alt rock or indie or, and we do a lot of those artists too, but it's like it's kind of like they have a lot more casual fans than they do super fans. And so that's kind of where we're in the business of how do you turn those casual fans kind of like into these super fans? You do it through experiences and offering them different things and, offering them a low fee pre-sale and kind of like helping build that relationship with the artist and with their music.
So for the artists that don't tour heavily, what applies to them in this? For the ones who just don't do it as much, does some of this stuff still work if they're not touring as heavily?
I think if anything, it might work more. I think that an artist who doesn't tour heavily, but still is like they're doing one tour a year, I think that's sometimes a great scenario to be in for those artists, because if they're going to sell VIP, they're going to sell it. And they're going to sell a lot of it. If they're touring once a year, if they're like, there's a lot of artists that will tour once a year. They do their summer headliner, right? That's the world they are in. Usually you're talking like a lot of classic bands. Or even alternative. That's what they do. They do once a year and they don't really support anybody else. Or maybe they do one headliner during the summer and then they support during the other times. But really they're kind of like going into, sheds and amphitheaters and going in and like playing those rooms. Like they're going to sell a lot of VIP because they only offer it once a year. And not to say bands that tour more than once a year don't, because they also sell a lot of VIP too. But I feel like those artists that are the ones that tour once a year are the ones more apt to have like those casual fans, right? And they find out about the VIP or the tour rather via the local radio station or the Ticketmaster mailer or the ad that hit them on their Facebook or their Instagram. But they also are going to sell a lot of VIP because those fans are like, hey, like I want to go see this band this summer. And when they want to go, they're going with their friends and they want to do the VIP. So I think it definitely, that can also help as well. And it maximizes, I think, a band's profitability sometimes, depending on the artist. And we have other bands that tour and do VIP 3 times a year and they sell out every single time. And they also know their limit every day and they've been doing it well and they have a healthy business from it. And they're able to then, really super serve those fans that want to be super served.
That makes sense. Final question for you. If an artist took nothing from this conversation except one thing to implement this week or this month, what would you tell them?
I would tell you to really focus on your mailing list. 100%. Right now, you should be having a MailChimp or a Lalo account or an OpenStage or any one of those services. I'm sure there's more. I'm just talking about the ones that I actively have artists that use. Being able to capture that data now is go a long way as you help build the band, and also, and to really help, capture who those early fans are. And I think that would go a long way right now.
Well, thank you very much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. I think it's going to be a great resource conversation for listeners.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.
As an independent podcaster, your support means the world to me. You could even say I depend on it. With that in mind, here are some things you can do to help support the podcast. Follow The Unstarving Musician on your favorite podcast app. Leave a review on your favorite podcast app. or shoot a review to me by email, rabonzo@unstarvingmusician.com, or just share this episode with a friend. This all has a big impact on our audience growth. Visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the other ways of supporting the podcast, including a quick and easy online tip jar. Click, tip, done. Easy and super appreciated. You'll find many other ways to support the podcast there, including through our affiliate partners, our online merch store, and more. The music you're hearing is New Gods Part 2, the instrumental mix by yours truly. You can hear, download, and or buy the full version with vocals by yours truly at rabonzo.com. If that was all too much to remember or process, just go to the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com to find links to all this and the stuff I talked about in today's episode. You can leave feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. Thanks for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.